Lord of the Rings, in a national poll, was voted the nation's favourite book. It also topped similar polls in other countries. Being a popular book and a good book are not necessarily the same thing. Lord of the Rings seems to have traversed that ravine and moved from being a popular book to being a good one in people's minds. But is this reputation deserved, or simply the result of its unprecedented popularity alone? Lord of the Rings has many ingredients to make it popular. A straightforward, non-twisting plotline of good versus evil. Characters who have straightforward goals with little inner conflict or doubt. It is set within a simplistic world of distinct ethnic groups, with all members sharing common values. Each group seems to lack much dissent or significant number of alternate thinkers within their ranks. The world is one of clear social structure and class stereotype. The races themselves hark back to long-standing and familiar romantic fairy tales, familiar to all from childhood stories. The book, though Tolkien denied it, does borrow heavily from previous works of literature that have certain qualities which have made them endure for such a long time, such as the Nibelungenlied, the Odyssey, King Arthur, Beowulf. Lord of the Rings, from its inception, has adopted a winning and popularist formula. Tolkien himself stated the book was not an allegory for anything, but this hasn't stopped many people over the years claiming it is. Lord of the Rings has been interpreted by people of various political persuasions to be an anti-nuclear discourse. The ring, a weapon that's too powerful to wield and corrupting the owner, as a metaphor for the bomb. The ecologically minded have seen the book as a warning against the evils of industrial society, with the Shire as the green and pleasant land, and Mordor the dark satanic mills. Many have seen the racial elements in the book, some romantically and some more politically. Tolkien was a Christian and Lord of the Rings a pagan world of magic. Lord of the Rings has been interpreted as a Christian work, something Tolkien always denied. However, the values of the book are Christian, and Frodo a very Christian figure, harking back to the days when the knight was put to the hazard and had to remain true. Christian values such as good, evil, loyalty, fellowship and faith are all predominant themes of the work. Gandalf is even resurrected from the dead to walk amongst his flock once again. Rather than it being a Christian allegory, it is not a Christian book, but a book that demonstrates it was written by a Christian, well within his comfort zone. The plot is very straightforward. The forces of good, who serendipitously happen upon the main armament of the enemy, have to destroy it. However, the destruction lies at the end of a long and perilous journey. Lord of the Rings is in this aspect more about the journey than the plot. So resembles the Odyssey. While there are a few twists and turns in the plot, such as Boromir's corruption and the splitting of the Fellowship, Tolkien's decision to make it journey-orientated allows his characters to visit lots of alien races and societies, and us to see his fertile imagination. This does seem to be Tolkien's ultimate motive in writing the book. Rather than develop the characters or plotline, it's a vehicle to show us the races and civilizations he's created in his imagination, and some of their language and literature. The major characters have different levels of character development. With most of the characters, despite knowing them for 3 books, we find out very little about them. They don't tell us their inner turmoil, their emotions, prejudices, vices, or most importantly, their own slightly different takes on any situation. Surely they have them. Legolas and Gimli are little more than extraneous caricatures, included only to show the wider context of the world, but contribute little to the main narrative. Aragorn is the most problematic character. His journey from Ranger of the North to King of Gondor is the greatest inner journey any character in the story has to make, but it simply doesn't happen. Aragorn is never challenged by Tolkien, his plight never explored. He's a rather dull figure who maintains a rather distant air. The 4 hobbits are Tolkien's real vehicle for the story. Merry and Pippin are designed in many ways to embody the Shire and the innocent, carefree world Frodo has left. Taking Merry and Pippin along allows Tolkien to take the Shire with him, instead of flashbacks or telling a story of what's going on in the Shire parallel to the main plot. Merry and Pippin, in their antics and thoughts, serve as a constant reminder to the reader of Frodo's motive. They allow the Frodo character to be of single purpose. Frodo's journey is fraught with so much anguish, you would imagine him and his views changing, but he pursues his original intent to the end and holds on to the same rural beliefs. The reader, however, doesn't question this, because whenever an event that may make the reader think Frodo should question his priorities happens, Tolkien can reintroduce Merry and Pippin and firm the base values back in the mind of the reader. The most complex character in the book is Gollum. For a large part, the evil characters are left even less developed than the good ones. Sauron, the figure in most need of development, is left neglected for the whole book. The evil at the centre of the world seems almost lame in his absence from the book. His proxy, the Witch King, makes mostly unsatisfying appearances that sell the reader short, being little more than a phantom. Gollum, on the other hand, we see from his earliest origins, his finding of the ring and his murder of his friend, through to his recovery of the ring and death. Gollum shows the capacity to react to circumstance and the ability to change no other character exhibits. Tolkien shows us what he is genuinely thinking. He's the only character that doubts his viewpoint and changes it. The Smeagol-Gollum dialogue is the strongest written part of the book, though the Gollum character owes a lot to Caliban. Even Tolkien noted this himself when he said, "On the whole, Sam is behaving well and living up to repute. He treats Gollum rather like Ariel to Caliban." But the similarity goes much deeper. Even Tolkien admitted both characters seem to represent the unrestrained desire and lament for something key, once had but no longer hold. By far the most troublesome character in the book is that of Samwise Gamgee. Edmund Wilson in The Nation in 1956 summed up the problem. For the most part, such characterizations Dr. Tolkien has been able to contrive are perfectly stereotyped. Frodo, the good little Englishman; Samwise, his dog-like little servant, who talks lower class and respectful, who never deserts his master. Sam certainly does have all the qualities of a dog. He's loyal, devoted, faithful, always wags his tail when he sees his master, and is obedient to a fault. He even gets jealous of Gollum when his master seems to find a new pet. He's actually much more bad than Edmund Wilson thought. Sam is more than a dog. He accepts unquestionably the viewpoint of his betters, and accepts they know what's best for him. Worst of all, he's given no opinions of his own. The other members of the Fellowship are making a seemingly doomed choice to fight Sauron out of personal virtue. Sam is simply there to follow Frodo. Tolkien doesn't even allow the lower classes the ability to be noble. Edmund Wilson is not Tolkien's only detractor. Michael Moorcock, in his essay Epic Pooh, accuses Tolkien of infantilism. Lord of the Rings ends happily ever after. Robin Hood didn't, he points out. Lord of the Rings is in the tradition of Arthur, Siegfried and Beowulf, but there's no tragedy. None of the characters make the final sacrifice in Tolkien's mind, or are ever in any real danger. Boromir dies, but only after he ceases to be true of heart. In this way it's really a children's book, and true escapism. This infantilism can also be seen in other parts of the book. In The Return of the King, Aragorn returns as the rightful king of Gondor, a romantic notion that Aragorn's ancestor, Isildur, vacated the throne 2,000 years before. Tolkien paints a picture of an unquestioned right through bloodline. How the people of Gondor would feel about this preposterous notion isn't explored. This notion is a fairy tale aimed at something for a child's mind, not adults. Perhaps the reason Tolkien was using increasingly more far-fetched plotlines can be explained with a simple statistical survey of the three books. In the first book, Fellowship of the Ring, we get to see the locations of the Shire, Bree, Rivendell, Moria, and encounter Elrond, Arwen, Tom Bombadil, the Black Riders, the Barrow Wight, the Squid Monster, and the Balrog. In the Two Towers we visit Rohan, Lothlorien, Fangorn, and Isengard, meet Galadriel and Treebeard. In Return of the King, we visit Mordor and Minas Tirith and meet Shelob. The steady reduction in both locations and characters in each subsequent book, and the filling of pages with characters chasing around barren lands without a lot happening, betrays a writer fast running out of ideas. The book finally ends with one of the great endings in fiction. Possibly no other book has ever matched this magnitude of anticlimax. A final confrontation between Sauron and Frodo is expecting the mighty sorcerer to perhaps offer Frodo a dilemma of joining him and ruling the world in exchange for the ring, or perhaps at the very least we get to meet him and he fights Frodo and Sam. But no, Sauron never materializes. He remains an absent landlord to his empire, and Frodo and Gollum and Sam are left alone to finish the book in a squabble rather than a crescendo. If it was all going to be this easy, one wonders at all what all the fuss was about at the start of the book. I asked the question, was Lord of the Rings more akin to literature or pulp fiction? The answer is no. It's more similar to Cinderella and The Wizard of Oz. Tolkien can't really be criticised for writing a poor book because he never set out to write one in the first place. He is setting a rather pedantic tale and some shallow characters in a highly rich and fantastic world. To develop histories and societies of the magnitude he does shows he's a great scholar, dreamer and collator of lore. That the context of the story is so rich it can mask the fact he is no spinner of tales at all. A lot of writers plan a book, and it feels planned, as they adhere to a well-tested, formulated structure. Tolkien seems to have written his dream, with no attempt to contrive anything, or any idea of formulating the book to a set of rules, and deserves respect for this at least. I just wish he could have realised this, and he could have done it in 200 pages, leaving the long-winded, erroneous booky stuff out altogether.